Week 1 of the NFL season is finally here. Woo! Welcome in to this episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Lucas Wenzel, Cameron Lawrence, Tyler Plath, all hanging out with you tonight. We are going to be breaking down the best and worst matchups for Week 1 of fantasy football. We are very excited for the NFL to be back. If you're excited for the NFL to be back, make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel, the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from. We'll be dropping 2 podcast episodes a week, one recapping the previous week and one looking ahead to the next week, as we will be doing in today's episode. If you don't follow us on social media, FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, where we are posting shorts every single day. We have YouTube videos coming out, like 15, 20-minute YouTube videos coming out 3 times a week. Like literally, you're going to have 2 pieces of content to watch from us, quite literally, every single day. You're not going to want to miss out on that this season. Fellas, I'm excited for week 1 of the NFL season. Give me one word for how you're feeling.
Enthusiastic.
Excited.
Mine was longer.
I know it was. Yours is so much better. I didn't.
Boys, this isn't a competition. Let's transition into breaking down the best and worst matchups for week 1 of the NFL season. Alrighty, we are going to keep this very simple. We're going to do it round robin style. We're going to break down 3 of the best running back matchups, 3 of the best wide receiver matchups. We're going to go ahead and throw in a bonus quarterback or tight end streamer. If a guy like George Kittle ends up missing this week, he's dealing with a groin injury right now. If Joe Burrow decides he isn't going to play week 1, I'll give you a few options of potential streamers there. We're going to flip. We're going to break down the worst running back and wide receiver matchups. And then, you know what? We're going to put together a new little segment at the end. I haven't figured out what to coin it yet. We're going to go ahead and build ourselves a parlay on Underdog Fantasy. Submit ourselves a nice little pick'em slip where we can win up to actually 10 times our entry this week. You're not going to want to miss that at the end of the episode on how you can do that. But fellas, let's dive into the best matchups for fantasy football this week that we are looking forward to for week 1 of the NFL season. Cameron, who is your favorite, or what is your favorite, running back matchup for week 1 of the NFL season?
For me, it was pretty easy. I looked over the schedule and I saw that, and I looked for whoever was playing the Texans. And this week it happened to be the Ravens, who have had one of the best rushing offenses for the last couple of years. And they're playing against the Texans, who have had a bottom 3 rush defense for the last 3 years. They've also had a bottom 5 scoring defense in that time frame. And before we jump down here, Tyler jokingly said, but it's a DeMeco Ryans show now. And I do understand that they added him and they added Will Anderson. So they have added pieces, but you're not changing a bottom 2 rush defense to all of a sudden be, top half over 1 year with just one player and a coach. So this is still an awful rush defense against J.K. Dobbins, who I think is finally going to be healthy. And even, with what we saw from him last year, he's averaged 5.9 yards per carry over his career. This Texans team, gave up 5 yards per carry last season. And you know what? This Houston offense is not going to score a lot of points. CJ Stroud and their cast of wide receivers, I just don't think in their first game against the Ravens in Baltimore are going to come out and put up a lot of points. So I think this Ravens team is going to get up early, and I think they're just going to pound the ball down the Texans' throats. So I think that's good for J.K. Dobbins. And if you're in a real deep league, I even think you could probably throw in Gus Edwards this week if you really need a running back there. Obviously, it remains to be seen with the Ravens running backs how they're going to be used in the rush or in the receiving game. That's something that's always been lacking. But with the new offensive scheme, we could see a little bit bump there. But overall, both these running backs should do pretty well this week.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. The Texans just don't have an elite defensive player on their line right now. Until Will Anderson Jr. Gets himself situated and acclimated to NFL game speed. But like Will Anderson Jr. isn't just going to change this defensive line overnight. Mm-hmm. So I 100% agree. If you have J.K. Dobbins, if he's your running back too, I feel pretty dang good about firing him up this week in your league. Tyler, how about you? Let's kick it over to you. I find it interesting your running back matchup that you actually like this week. I'm curious to hear the case that you make on your favorite running back matchup this week.
It's the Lions running backs versus the Chiefs. And I know a lot of people are going to initially hear that and go, well, it's the Chiefs away on the kickoff in the very first game of the year. And so it's going to be just an absolute, unbearable and just not so great environment. But here's the thing. If you want to beat the Chiefs at home, there's only one way to do that, and that's by keeping Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. And so how you do that is you control possession and you control the clock. You do that by running the ball, and you do that by completing short and easy passes. So that bodes well for Amon-Ra St. Brown. That bodes well for Jahmyr Gibbs. And if you're going to run the ball, that bodes really well for David Montgomery, especially when the Chiefs are more than likely not going to have Chris Jones clogging up the middle of the defense. So you take all those things into consideration and you look at last year, the Chiefs allowed the 13th most fantasy points to running backs last year, but they allowed the most receptions to running backs last year. So in PPR formats, that is a very, 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 very good stat to have in your head for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. So there's not a whole lot that goes into breaking down this matchup besides just you look at X's and O's and you look at, okay, if Detroit really wants to go beat Kansas City, which I feel like as an NFL team, that's your goal every single week, keep Mahomes on the sideline by controlling the clock, running the ball, short and easy passes. So both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to be, at least I think, both of those guys will be heavily featured in the game plan this week.
Now, I should point out that we are recording this episode on Tuesday, September 5th, right around 7:30 p.m. And mostly because we can't get to it tomorrow. We work full-time jobs during the day, people. We have other things to do with our lives. But typically we'll record this episode the night before, and then it comes out immediately following Thursday morning. So typically we won't have as much time in between when this episode comes out. Or when we record this episode, when this episode comes out. But as of, again, 7:30 Tuesday, Andy Reid, there's been no progress with Chris Jones in contract negotiations, who is still not reported to camp. So there's more reports coming out saying that they are fully prepared to play without Chris Jones week 1. So I think you bring up a good point there, Ty, of I don't think the Lions actually want to get into a shootout, because Patrick Mahomes is going to absolutely piece apart this secondary week 1. The Lions overhauled their entire secondary this offseason. And you don't just overhaul your entire secondary and just have immediate synergy week 1. No matter how many good pieces you bring in, it takes time for these secondaries to mesh. You don't just build the Legion of Boom overnight. So that being, and the Lions didn't even have the talent of Legion of Boom. Let's also make that very clear. So yeah, if you're going to keep Patrick Mahomes out the field, you're going to want to run the football. And if they don't have Chris Jones clogging up the middle, you're right. It could be a decent little week for David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not going to get enough Jahmyr Gibbs in my starting lineups this week because I didn't draft him enough. But Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he'll be a great start week 1 against Kansas City as well. My favorite running back matchup this week, Cameron, I took on the same process that you did. I looked down the week 1 matchups and I said, who plays the Chicago Bears week 1? And wouldn't you know, it's the Green Bay Packers. So I absolutely love Aaron Jones this week. I think you could sprinkle in a little AJ Dillon if you're in a deep league this week as well. If you went 0 RB and you somehow ended up with AJ Dillon, as a running back 2 or 3. Look, I think he might be worth a start this week if you went 0 RB. This Bears defensive line, sure, they're making improvements, but they're still one of the worst in the NFL. They signed DeMarcus Walker and Andrew Billings this offseason. They drafted a handful of linemen in the NFL draft this year, but let's just call a spade and say these additions aren't significant enough upgrades to actually make a massive difference right out of the gate, especially week 1, right? When these teams are adding pieces and pieces and pieces to their lines, to their secondaries, they don't just mesh overnight. They don't just click because they had one offseason of working together. They have to play NFL game speed together. And so I don't think any of these additions make a difference for this Bears defensive line week 1. They gave up 25.74 fantasy points per game to running backs last year. That was the second most. They also gave up the third most rushing yards. They allowed 20 rushing touchdowns to running backs last year. That was the second most. Now, you also throw in Jordan Love starting his first committed NFL game. Crazy stat. Before this, like Trey Lance had more dropbacks than Jordan Love. Like, can you believe that? The now backup quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys had more dropbacks than Jordan Love has for his entire career. So let's be honest. They're gonna have to ease Jordan Love in. As much as I think Jordan Love could be actually, just fine for the Packers this year, which is all he really has to be, if we're being perfectly honest. Why not take some of the pressure off him right away in his first committed game at replacing Aaron Rodgers permanently? What better way to take the pressure off of him than to shove the ball in Aaron Jones's gut the whole game? Mm-hmm. What better way is there for to ease him into an NFL game? So I this is about maintaining Jordan Love's confidence. This is about just an absolutely wonderful matchup against the Chicago Bears. So I am starting, basically all Green Bay running backs with confidence this week. I don't think AJ Dillon quite sniffs, standard 12-team league flex spots. But again, if you went 0 RB, if you're in a deeper league and you need to throw AJ Dillon into your lineup, I think he could actually squeak you out a nice week here.
I will say, I think he could be. I do think he should be in consideration for a lot of flexes. There has been a lot of rumors going around that the Packers are not going to look to re-sign him after this year, and that they are going to try and feed him as much as they possibly can. So he could still be seeing 15 carries a game with Aaron Jones, next to him, and he's a decent enough receiving back. Obviously, he's going to get a lot less receiving work than Aaron Jones, but he'll catch the ball in the backfield every once in a while. So I do think he could be thrown into your lineup, but like Lucas said, he most likely will be in your lineup only if you're running a 0 RB or something like that.
Aaron Jones is the smash Green Bay running back. You got to start this week by far. Like if Aaron Jones averages 7 yards a carry this week, I wouldn't be surprised. A little bit of an exaggeration there, but you get what I'm saying. Let's move on to wide receivers. I've been talking quite a bit there. Cameron, your favorite wide receiver matchup for week 1 now is you're kind of all in on this offense this week.
Yep. Oh yeah. I love this offense this week. I love this quarterback pretty much the entire season. He's one of my favorites, but it's the Jaguars, and their 2 wide receivers, Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, are the 2 I'll focus on. I think Zay Jones could maybe be if you're in a real deep league, a guy that you throw in, but Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk for sure. The Colts had they were pretty good against the pass last season, partly because they were really bad against the run, and they were down a lot, so teams didn't have to throw on them a ton, and also because they had Stephon Gilmore last year, and they no longer have him. They have the second worst secondary in the NFL according to PFF right now. So I got to think that the Jaguars are going to try and get Calvin Ridley back in this first game, and I think they're going to look to him early and often to just try and get him going. They know they have a weak secondary. If I'm remembering right, the Colts had 3 of the only players last year to play over, it was like 500 some snaps and have a coverage grade less than 57. So, and they got 3 of those guys are starting this week. So, it is just a tough secondary that they're playing against. We already know Christian Kirk and Trevor Lawrence have got that connection from last season. So, and Kirk did average 17 points per game in his 2 games against the Colts last year. So I do think this is a matchup that they are going to really look to exploit to get off to a hot start this season.
What better way to declare your control over the AFC South now than just coming out and absolutely walloping a divisional opponent week 1 that will frankly be at the mercy of this team. I just don't see a way for this Colts team to really put up a fight against this absolutely high-powered Jaguars offense. And they'll jump on them early. Doug Peterson will make sure this team just pounces on Anthony Richardson and this Colts team early.
Yeah, I think that's the only worry, is that they get up by too much, that Anthony Richardson struggles against this defense and that they're up 28-0 in the second quarter. I think that would be the only worry with starting these 2, but you're starting them anyways.
Right. And if you're up 28-0, it's probably because Trevor Lawrence was throwing the ball around the yard, and Ridley and Kirk each caught a touchdown this week. Right. So I think they're both smash starts this week. No questions asked. Ty, I'll kick it over to you. I sneaky really, really like your favorite matchup of the week out at the wide receiver position. Because I don't want to say there's going to be an immediate overreaction on a certain player in this wide receiver group, but go ahead, tell the people who your favorite wide receiver matchup is this week.
It's the Seahawks versus the Rams. Okay. And you look at the Rams, no more Jalen Ramsey. Okay. And that literally leaves Aaron Donald. And I'm going to talk and stall a little bit so I can read you off the starting lineup for the Rams defense. It's not good at all. At all. You have Jonah Williams. You have Bobby Brown III. You have Aaron Donald. You have Byron Young, rookie. You have Ernest Jones. You have Christian Roseboom. You have Michael Hoyt. You have Trey Hodges-Tomlinson mixed in with a little bit of Kobe Durant, Darion Kendrick, Akello Witherspoon. But then your safeties, Jordan Fuller, and literally love this name, Russ Yeast.
You could have just made up names and I would have known just the same amount of people as you just listed.
Honestly, this is like one of those, like, you go into Madden and you just create a bunch of random players for whatever reason and you just put them on a team. That's literally what this is. Okay. So DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett going up against this Rams defense. There is no other explanation other than just like, you'd be dumb to bench them anyway. But like with this matchup, like, expect a lot of good things. Okay. Like, even if and here's the other piece to this, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I'm pretty sure he still has a cast on his wrist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Who knows if it gets taken off before or whatever. Right. But even if Jackson is, if JSN plays, you should start JSN too, because I know he's coming back from his injury, but like, the matchup is too good. Okay. And the same concern that Cam mentioned for the Jaguars, right? Like, let's say Seattle gets a big early and whatnot, then it kind of dampens it a little bit. But just take this more as, confirmation of like a really, really good start, really, really good flex plays with like Tyler Lockett and potentially JSN if he plays. He shouldn't. But look, it's way too easy. It's going to be dynamite week 1.
Yeah. He is practicing,
but
yes,
I don't know if you really want to risk that week 1 beginning of the season. And
if you're the Seahawks, for sure. Yeah. Right. I don't know why you'd play him right now.
Yeah. I'm pulling up my weekly rankings right now because I'm seeing where I have Tyler Lockett. Basically, the point I want to make is I think Tyler Lockett is going to be like the biggest week 1 victory lap of the entire season for some fantasy analysts out there. Because everyone's saying, oh my gosh, he's finally a value. Oh, look at him. He's still an insane value. Look, he's putting up top 15 numbers in week 1. I don't have him ranked there. I'm looking at where I have him ranked. Top 20. I do have him top 20. I have him as my wide receiver 21, but he's our consensus wide receiver 18 on the week. And when he finishes, right around that wide receiver 15 spot, everyone's going to go crazy. And people are going to go out and probably, I don't think he'd be a sell high right away, but this is a matchup that the Seahawks can absolutely exploit. As long as Aaron Donald is in the middle, I'm not necessarily avoiding Ken Walker. Like, I think you still fire up Ken Walker this week, but if the Seahawks are going to trounce the Rams, it's going to come by the air because Sean McVay went into Madden and created a bunch of, overall 60 graded cornerbacks and are throwing them in the starting lineup.
They got to balance out those contracts somehow.
Somehow, right? He tweaked the Madden contracts by hand. they're making not even minimum salary in the NFL. Absolutely. You should be firing up all Seahawks wide receivers this week. You're already starting DK Metcalf, but Tyler Lockett should absolutely be in your starting lineup this week. No questions asked. My favorite wide receiver matchup this week. This one is pretty easy for me. It's the New Orleans Saints wide receivers versus the Tennessee Titans. Chris Olave. Yes, he's already in your starting lineups. I think he could have himself an absolutely massive week against his Titans secondary. We put out a video earlier. That was last week, actually, now, where his line at Underdog came out. There's only 58.5 receiving yards. I couldn't believe my eyes. So obviously I told people to go up and smash it. You want to know what his line's at now? 64.5, up 6 yards. And literally, when did I release that video? Thursday. So 4 days,
still too low.
A day. And honestly, I think it is still too low. I get people like, oh, Mike Thomas, baby. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but I mean, this is just a smash higher, on Chris Olave's projection on Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code fellas. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. But here's the thing about the Titans secondary. They made very few improvements to their secondary this offseason. They kind of like the Bears. The Bears actually went out and drafted a bunch of people to try and plug and play. But the Titans, on the other hand, like they brought in Byron Murphy-Bunting from Tampa Bay, who actually had a career best coverage grade last year. But like he's not going to take this Titans secondary over the top.
Sorry, hold on. Sean Murphy Bunting.
What did I say? Byron? I meant Sean Murphy.
I was like, wait a second.
I typed up Byron Murphy. I'm like, wait a second.
I'm glad I wasn't alone because I was looking that up. I was like, well, that sounds.
Wait a second.
I was a little suspect there, Lucas.
All right, where's the helmet? Sean Murphy Bunting. Thank you.
It doesn't make too much of a difference for their secondary, though, whether it's
no. I mean, Sean Murphy, again, he did have a career best coverage grade last year, but you look at him, his first 3 years in the league, and it was nothing to write home about before he got to Tampa Bay. So look, they gave up the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers last year. They gave up 37.71 fantasy points per game to wide receivers last year. The Titans did. They gave up 20 receiving touchdowns. That was the second most. This is just too easy. You get Derek Carr in there now. He's an upgrade at quarterback. Look, we'll talk about the Saints running backs and the Titans run defense in a little bit, but I'm not expecting big things from the Saints rush attack this week. Michael Thomas, I honestly think he can sniff your starting lineups this week. I think he's kind of a similar Tyler Lockett-ish kind of a play, except Tyler Lockett obviously has way more upside, I believe, than Michael Thomas does. But if you're looking for a flex play, if you're going matchup dependent flex play, like Michael Thomas is going to be the guy you can probably slot in there this week, because I think he could take advantage in his first action back since early last season.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Go for it.
Someone I know has a flex spot where they have 3 players they're considering: Michael Thomas, Raheem Mostert, and Jordan Addison. Who are you firing up in that situation?
Oh my goodness. I would probably, I think I would lean Jordan Addison, but I get it because Jordan Addison's a rookie. He could get out to a slower start. If you want the sure thing, like if you're going safety there, Michael Thomas, I think Jordan Addison has more opportunity for fantasy points this week though, against Tampa Bay, because I think like Minnesota and Tampa Bay is not going to be fun to watch, but if that game turns into a shootout, like we could get what was it, Detroit and Seattle last year, where it was like an 83-point game or something like that. I can't remember what the exact final score was, but like the Minnesota Tampa Bay game, let's be honest, like it could get ugly in a hurry and become a 36-28 kind of a game. For sure. So I think I'm going Jordan Addison just because I think he would offer more upside, but Michael Thomas is probably the safer play out of that group.
I mean, it's a funny question because if Devon A-Chain doesn't play, then it's Raheem Mostert. But I get why you asked the question because it involved the Saints wide receiver. So we should just move on.
We'll move on. Let's quick to wrap out the best matchups that we'd like for this week. Let's of course you all go in and highlight and bold. That's my mistake in the doc. Oh my goodness.
It even says
it's Brian.
Is that what I put? Dog, it's been a long day. I came home and sat down and I just
kick them boys down.
A quick quarterback tight end streamer. You can choose. We don't have to go too in depth on this one because let's be honest, nobody wants to hear us talk about tight ends that might not actually do anything this week. But let's say you're a George Kittle manager and he actually is out. I can't say he's out week 1. We don't know that yet as of this podcast, but let's say he does sit out week 1 with his groin injury and you all of a sudden need to pick up somebody on the waiver wire who may not have been drafted. What tight end are you looking to start this week in his place?
I'm going with Tyler Higbee, who plays Seattle. 3 reasons for that. Seattle gave up the most points to tight end last season. There's potentially no Cooper Kupp in this game, and he was 4th in targets among tight ends last year with 108. So he gets the ball thrown to, and yeah, he is my tight end streamer for this week.
Tyler, how about you?
Mine is another Saints weapon in Juwan Johnson. Tennessee allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends last year. They gave up the 2nd most receptions, most targets to tight ends. So he's a big red zone threat, I think, this week. I think MT and Olave can fill it up between the 20s, and then when they get into the red zone, it could be the Juwan Johnson show.
Does that mean Derek Carr is a good start this week?
Absolutely. The top 10 quarterback, Derek Carr? Is that who you're talking about?
Wrong. Let's move on. I don't want to talk about Derek Carr. Are you kidding me? There's a reason I only brought him up for half a second in my wide receiver comments. Cameron's favorite tight end, Gerald Everett. He's actually a phony. He's a fake fan. Of Gerald Everett against the Miami Dolphins. I think the Dolphins Chargers game is going to be a shootout. I'm like, no matter how good we think the Dolphins secondary without Jalen Ramsey, they're gonna be fine. But I think this could be just a Justin Herbert Tua Tagovailoa. Let's just keep chucking the ball downfield, have an air raid this game. So Gerald Everett could be a benefactor of that, a beneficiary of that, where he finds a pay dirt, just a gross touchdown where you're like, why didn't that touchdown go to Keenan Allen? And it's like, yeah, well, because Gerald Everett scored the touchdown instead. So Miami also gave up 6th most fantasy points to tight ends last year, 4th most receptions. Again, I understand it's a new year, but these are just things we go off of where it's like an entire defense doesn't change over the course of the offseason. But if this game is going to be a shootout, I would bet on Gerald Everett getting in on the action as well. Let's go ahead and take a quick break here from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy, and then we will be back with the worst matchups for week 1. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back and we're going to break down. I got you guys with the quick follow-up. No pause in between the segue statement.
It's just payback for Brian Murphy Bunting.
Yeah, piss off. We're going to break down the worst running back matchups for week 1 of fantasy football. Cameron, we'll have you kick it off here. Who is your least favorite running back matchup for week 1?
I'm still starting him, but it's Ramondre Stevenson and the New England Patriots, and then also a Zeke as well. He's a guy that I would not start playing against the Eagles. The Eagles have maybe the best defensive line in football. They had maybe one of the best defensive lines in football last year, and then they added Jalen Carter this year. So it's just ridiculous.
Devon Hargrave and brought in Jalen Carter.
Yeah, so it's going to be disgusting up front, and I got a feeling the Eagles are going to go into this game and try to make Mac beat them. Right, they want to see Mac Jones beat them, so they're going to just stack the box and be stuffing the run, and that's going to be pretty tough sledding for Ramondre Stevenson and Zeke. Obviously, we saw last year Stevenson was good catching the ball at the backfield, so that's why he would continue to be a start, and you draft him as your starter, so you are. But Zeke this week, I would not be touching. I bet Bill does want to try and establish a run, but it's just not a matchup that I really want to be a part of. So It could be gross, and I would temper your expectations for the New England running backs this week.
They're doing a whole weekend honoring Tom Brady, Father Brady. Did you guys see that?
No.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing a whole Tom Brady honoring weekend, and this is the worst matchup they probably could have drawn to host that weekend. I don't know. So maybe you're like, dog, they can't lose when they're having a whole weekend devoted to Brady. I don't think that necessarily comes at the hands of Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott.
It'd be Juju Smith and his knees.
Apparently, that relationship is pretty sour already, which is absolutely. The Patriots just seem like an absolute mess. But I agree. I want nothing to do with them week 1 against Philadelphia. Literally nothing. 0. Ramondre, again, you kind of have to fire him up. But Ezekiel Elliott, yeah, he can be buried down on your bench for the first week. Ty, I'll kick it over to you. Who is your least favorite running back matchup for week 1?
It's the Bills running backs versus the Jets. I feel pretty confident in saying you weren't planning on starting Damian Harris already. If you were, 0 RB in it a little bit and you got James Cook, you may still have to play him. But just really take this as more so of a caution and just kind of a brace for impact kind of, warning. It's just not going to be a very productive game for the backfield. And as much as we have liked this backfield in the offseason. Lucas.
I like James Cook. No, I don't like the backfield. I like James Cook.
Well, yes. Thank you for clarifying. That was, yeah.
Huge Latavius Murray guy.
Right. Yeah. Big Nyheim Hines guy before that happened. Yeah.
No,
man. All right, move on. No, look, as much as we have, been in on James Cook, at least, we need to see a game to see how it's going to work out and stuff like that. And this is just not the game for that, right? This is one that you ideally should put both guys on the bench and just watch, because you're going to the Jets in Rodgers' first game. And that is just going to be an environment that I wish I could be in just to kind of take in, because that's going to be electric. But yeah, like I said, this is just not going to be a game for really either of the Bills running backs.
For sure.
Is the Bills defense overrated?
I think if you're talking about them as top 5 defense, then yes. I don't think they are anymore. I mean, I think I don't think they're as good as they have been, I think is the way I would put it.
Yeah. So here's the big thing for the Bills defense. It's not Leslie Frazier anymore, because he's taking a year off, and I don't know off the top of my head if it's going to be Sean McDermott that's going to be calling the defense, or if it's going to be someone else. I don't think they generate enough pressure on quarterbacks. That may just be a little, that may not be a totally correct assumption, but Rodgers may just tear that defense apart. Honestly, like it very, very well could happen.
Von Miller is also still on the pup, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Well, and that's more so what I'm getting at, because I just don't think there's what we need for the Bills running backs is game script.
Yep.
We need the Bills to be up 20 points so they can just feed James Cook. So they can just feed Latavius Murray. They can just feed Damian Harris, right? Like, I have no interest in them really. Otherwise, I can't say I have no interest, because I do think James Cook could take a nice step forward this year. The buzz, I will happily, James Cook will be the guy I will happily fall victim to the training camp buzz this year. Like, that's fine if I fall victim to that. But like against Rodgers in his first game with the Jets at home with Garrett Wilson, they get Trey White back in the secondary. Kyer Elam, he was a nice little piece last year, proved to actually be a fairly good cornerback. He was scouted to be one, but I think surpassed most people's expectations last year. Like you said, though, I just don't know if they generate enough pressure on the quarterback. So I don't think this is even going to be like a friendly game script, which is what you kind of have to hope for with this Bills backfield. Sorry, I had to throw that out there, because I just I've been seeing that floated around a lot of actually this Bills defense is overrated. And I can't decide if I agree or not, because like you said, Cameron, if we're talking about them top 5, absolutely, I think they're overrated then. But I don't know, are they top 3rd in the league? So that put them top 10?
I would say they're much more in the solid tier than they are elite tier.
Elite tier, yeah, right. That's probably the best way of putting it. All right, we spent too much time talking about the Bills defense when really we were talking about the Bills running backs versus the Jets defense. But again, in terms of game script and how that impacts the Bills running backs, tie everything back together here. My least favorite running back matchup for this week: the New Orleans Saints running backs versus the Tennessee Titans. Now, could this be our boys' show? Jamal Williams. Leader of the hidden village of the dead. Could it be the Jamal Williams show? Sure. Yeah, it could be. But if Kendre Miller plays, oh boy, this is a committee backfield against the defense that I want absolutely zero to do with. Even if Jamal Williams has the backfield to himself, I really don't want anything to do with him this week. The Titans defensive line. This is an elite defensive line. This is not just a solid defensive line. This is an elite defensive line. Last year, they only gave up 15 fantasy points per game to running backs. That was the 3rd fewest. They only gave up 6 rushing touchdowns to running backs. That was tied for the 2nd fewest. Now, the best case scenario we can hope for here is that the Saints get off to a big jump and they're up, 24-3, and they get to run clock. but the Titans are ready for that. Like, the Titans are built to stop the run, and if you're going to try and run the clock, you're going to be just shoving Jamal Williams up the gut for 2 yards a game every single play. That's just not fruitful fantasy production. So if Kendre Miller plays, it's a committee. I want nothing to do with it. And even if Jamal Williams has the backfield to himself, I'm still not all that interested in a matchup where I think the Tennessee Titans are elite against the run, which is why teams are just going to pound them in the secondary, which is where I think the Saints are totally going to take advantage this week.
Yeah, last year Jamal Williams had 10 games with more than 16 carries. He had 2 games with over 100 rushing yards, right? So if he doesn't fall in the end zone, he's not in a fantasy threat. So that's really what it would come down to for him is, do we think he scores a touchdown and probably even 2 to, really be fantasy relevant this week? So, and like you said, they're going to try and throw the ball with us off against this defense. So yeah, that's what it would come down to. And then if you got Kendre Miller in the mix, and you also have Taysom Hill on this team as well. So you just, touchdowns are not guaranteed by any means for Jamal Williams this week.
100% agree. Let's move on to the wide receivers then. The least favorite wide receiver matchups for week 1. This one kind of pains me, Cameron, but I'm afraid you're 100% right on this one. Who's your least favorite wide receiver matchup for week 1?
Yeah, this one felt like pretty low-hanging fruit. I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals, Marquise Brown and Rondale Moore. Commanders have a pretty decent defense. We actually thought they were going to be really, really good last year, and they kind of got off to a more disappointing start and then came around towards the end. But PFF has them as a top 3 defensive line and a top 10 secondary right now. And, that's in and of itself, something to be worried about. But then it is a new system, and Clayton Tune is starting his first NFL game ever. I think later down
starter.
I think he was he not? I was like 95.
I don't think they did.
It's Clayton Tune or it's Josh Dobbs. I have your pick.
I like that was breaking news that they actually named a starting quarterback. I didn't realize.
I thought they did earlier today. Maybe I misread a tweet. But anyways, even if it is Josh Dobbs, right? I think they need who just came in. Right. The Josh Dobbs, the other thing, he's been there for 2 weeks. So I think no matter what, it's going to take at least a game before we see fantasy relevance from Marquise Brown. And it is a road game in Washington, and Washington is under new ownership. And I don't think obviously that affects game script or anything, but I do think that the fans of Washington are going to kind of come out in groves. They're going to be excited, right? It's a new era. They're looking at a new stadium soon. So, Washington as a whole, I think, is going to have a little different hype going on. And, I also think that Terry McLaurin's been banged up a little bit. So I think they're really going to work on relying on this defense for this game. They're going to make sure that the defense is as sound as can possibly be, just in case, Sam Howell's, not his first start, but one of his first starts, first open new season starting. And so I just think they're really going to rely on the defense here. And I think that it could be a long day for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, and a long day in the sense of it's not even like they're getting blown out. Mm-hmm. Like a long day in the sense of nothing is working. It's just going to be hard to watch, mm-hmm. right? That's exactly what it's going to be. And you're right. This Washington defense, the Washington secondary actually got better. Like Deontay, I'm excited to see Deontay Banks in Washington. Mm-hmm. I think he could be
Emmanuel Forbes.
Did I say Deontay Banks? Emmanuel Forbes. Thank you very much. Emmanuel Forbes. I'm like elite ball hawking athleticism. I don't know why I went to Emmanuel Forbes. Yes, thank you. Why I went to Deontay Banks. Emmanuel Forbes. Golly, my names are all off today. I should just quit trying to add points on top of other people's opinions. But I'm excited to see this Washington secondary this year. I do think they strive to make improvements there this offseason so they don't get burned in the secondary and that their defense can actually keep them in games knowing that, hey, you know what? Our offense isn't exactly elite, isn't exactly, put up a ton of points. But if our defense can keep us in games, that's what's going to matter most this year. And against the Cardinals questionable offense in week 1, I think there's a very good opportunity that those wide receivers do disappoint. As much as I've been in on them all offseason, this is not the week 1 matchup I wanted them to draw.
Yep.
Either your least favorite wide receiver matchup for week 1.
The Broncos versus the Raiders. And this one is kind of a tricky one because you look at it from Denver's side of things. It's the first game with Sean Payton. You're going up against Vegas, and Vegas's defense is still kind of figuring it out as it goes a little bit, I guess. I mean, your starting corners are Marcus Peters and Yeah, I can't even call it off the top of my head. So look, like from that perspective, you're like, actually, it's kind of a sneaky good matchup. But then when you actually look at like who the wide receivers are going to be, I mean, this is assuming that Jerry Jeudy is going to be out. And if he plays, which again, doesn't seem likely, but if he does, it's still not going to be like 100% Jerry Jeudy. So like, look, we saw Courtland Sutton last year, and I'm not ready to fully buy in on Courtland Sutton. Like, yes, there's opportunity and there's, that matters, but Courtland Sutton and Marvin Mims, right? There are just better players with better matchups to put in your lineup over those guys. That's essentially what it comes down to, right? Like you should consider starting guys like Michael Pittman Jr., right? And like that one's a weird one because everyone's like, oh, he's got Anthony Richardson, but like gameplay may force Richardson to throw the ball a little bit, right? Zay Flowers, I would even consider starting him just in a Todd Monken offense. I would even start Michael Thomas ahead of either of those guys. Like like I said, there are just better players with better matchups to play than Courtland Sutton or Marvin Mims. They're nice pieces to stash away, but don't force them into your lineup this week.
I like that a lot.
I think that's just good sound advice in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might not be absolutely 100% dreading the matchup, but if we're talking about like fantasy wide receivers are going to put up points for you this week, like we just don't like. Yeah, like you said, there's just better options, and there's not a need because Courtland Sutton might be the wide receiver one, Marvin Mims might be the wide receiver one. Like that's not prospect enough to automatically throw them into your lineup, into your flex spot to just set it and forget about it. I do agree. I think that's a good word there. I need you to be careful as you hear my least favorite matchup for week 1. The Bills wide receivers versus the New York Jets.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
Can I mute? Where's my Tony Reale mute button?
No,
I'm not telling you to sit Stephon Diggs this week. You should absolutely 100%. Don't even think twice about it. You should start Stephon Diggs this week. I did not say to sit Stephon Diggs. You would be brainless to sit Stephon Diggs this week. 100% brainless. But Sauce Gardner, there's a case out there that he might be the best cornerback in the NFL right now. There's a case for it. I'm not saying he is. I think I need to see it another year because as phenomenal as he was his rookie season, not everything sticks year to year. So I still think he is one of the best corners in the league. I mean, we're talking about a guy who gave up 0 touchdowns last year. Now you could talk about that. Oh, he was in zone coverage. He played zone schemes. Well, he wasn't credited with whatever it is. I don't care. To allow 0 touchdowns, even in man coverage. In man coverage, he was elite too. Okay, like the man was elite all around last year, and he's going to be lined up across from Diggs in man coverage. If they're in zone, he's going to be all over the field. So that impacts then the likes of Gabe Davis. Even if you want to throw Dalton Kincaid, if you just want to say Bills pass catchers in general, the Jets last year. Phenomenal secondary. They gave up the fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, 24 fantasy points per game. They only gave up 10 receiving touchdowns. That was the 3rd fewest. And they only gave up 1,857 receiving yards. Less than 2,000. That was the fewest in the league last year. So, could the Bills have to throw the ball if, like we talked about earlier, Rodgers, starts to piece apart this Bills defense? Yeah, of course. There's a case for that. But you want to know who Josh Allen's going to? Stephon Diggs. He's going to the guy who will make him plays. So you're starting Diggs. Let me reiterate. You are starting Diggs. But don't be surprised if he has a down week. Like Diggs might not go out and be, a top 7, 8 wide receiver this week. Heck, Diggs could even finish outside of the top 10 wide receivers this week, and I wouldn't be too shocked by that. So that could make keep this in mind now. They're probably my least favorite matchup week 1, but Diggs could be a great buy low candidate after week 1. If somebody's just like, holy crap, really? I drafted this dude with the 8th overall pick, and he gave me 7 points week 1. Are you kidding me? You go out and buy Stephon Diggs then. But Gabe Davis, he ain't sniffing your starting lineup this week. I want nothing to do with Gabe Davis this week against the New York Jets. Their secondary is arguably the best in football. And I would not be surprised if we get a down week from the Bills, wide receivers specifically. And again, I think you can probably throw Dalton Kincaid in there, but I wouldn't suggest starting Dalton Kincaid for the first probably 4 weeks of the NFL season regardless.
I do think you could bring up a good point. If you drafted anyone in the first 6, maybe even 7 rounds, week 1 you should start him, right? I think for 1 week, you just trust who you drafted. And we're talking about these matchups, but talking about these matchups right now, I mean, a lot less than talking about these matchups, week 4, week 5, because we're basing it off of things we've seen last year, off-season moves and stuff like that. And then the other thing I think you made a good point of is key in, especially right after this week, key in on your league mates who are prone to panic. If you know that the Stephon Diggs manager is prone to panic and Stephon Diggs has 11 points, you should be all over him right after week 1. I think both those points are great.
Yeah, the statement has nothing to do. It has less to do with start and sit and more to do with look at the value of these players after 1 week. Because Stephon Diggs is going to be a great buy low candidate. I just don't think Gabe Davis should be in your starting lineup week 1 anyways. But just don't be surprised if there's a down week here for the Bills wide receivers.
Yep.
Alrighty, fellas, let's bring it home. We're going to bring up a new segment here. I'm very much looking forward to it to see how this pans out throughout the year. Let's go ahead and I'll transition. I'll chat a little bit about our new segment. I feel like I need a different transition for that. I feel like I need a new sound bit. I'm gonna have to come up with one here. And
Ty, get on the guitar. Come on, strum us one out.
Yeah,
you
Ty.
Heard we all guitar
know.
guy.
Just have Ty in the back.
Oh my goodness! All right, new segment we're integrating this year. I think I'm gonna start by calling it the fellas pick 'em. The fellas pick 'em. I don't know if I actually like that. Hopefully we can come up with a better name for that as the season goes on.
Vote in the comments below.
Yeah, put it in the comments, but that's the best that we could do on the fly.
That's the best I can do. I've been racking my brain for it. There's 2 things that I've been thinking about most of the day today outside of my focus primarily on my job. But the 2 things I've been thinking about was Cameron actually taking Tyler Higbee over Gerald Everett because I wanted to talk about Tyler Higbee and what in the world I'm going to call this segment. So yeah, if you have any thoughts, drop it in the comments below. But this segment, we're going to go ahead every week. We are going to scour all of the projections Underdog Fantasy provides in their Pick'em on the Underdog Fantasy app, where if you can go ahead and build a Pick'em slip of pairing 2 projections together to triple your money, 3 to 6 times your money, 4 to 10 times it. 5 entries will 20 times your entry on your pick'em slip. So what we're going to do each and every week, we are going to go ahead and we are going to build a pick'em slip of our own that we will go ahead and submit on Underdog Fantasy, so we can track throughout the season how we fare, who's blowing all of our pick'em slips and who's getting all of our picks wrong. But hopefully the goal is that you can get some more sound advice on some other players that we specifically like this week, some projections that we like in Underdog Fantasy, and how you can potentially even make a nice little chunk of change on the side as well. And if you sign up for Underdog Fantasy with the code FELLAS, they'll double your first deposit up to $100. So Cameron, as you were scouring all of the projections Underdog has to offer in their Pick'em lobby for week 1, which was one of your favorites?
I actually went with a really gross pick here. I'm taking a Tampa Bay wide receiver. I'm trusting in Baker Mayfield a little bit, but I took Chris Godwin higher than 55.5 receiving points. Or receiving yards, excuse me. I already screwed up. We have to restart the whole episode. We can't have this on the record.
Yeah, freaking Byron Murphy.
Byron. Anyways, his teammate Mike Evans is at 54.5 receiving yards. And I do think if we're looking at who could hit it in 2 catches, I think Mike Evans is more likely. But if we're looking at this game as a whole, I think that if anything on this Vikings defense, the one thing they have going is they do have some decent guys who could rush the quarterback a little bit. And I think that I'm saying if we're looking at the there's not a high bar on this Vikings.
No, there's not a high bar.
And with the way that, Ryan Jensen being out now for Tampa, I don't think their offensive line is the strongest. So if I'm looking, I don't know if Baker's going to have a ton of time to hit Mike Evans on these routes that take a little longer to develop, which is why I like Chris Godwin more here. And this Vikings secondary was terrible last year. Obviously, it brought in Brian Flores. They brought in, what's the guy's name?
Byron Murphy.
See, that's okay.
There it is.
That's what I thought. That's okay. Now it all makes sense.
I psyched you out earlier.
You did. I was gonna say it earlier, and then okay. They lost Patrick Peterson, but I just don't think that they're going to be, if they are improving, I don't think it's going to be a major improvement. So I still think that the Buccaneers will be able to move the ball pretty well against this defense. And looking on the other side of the ball, I think the Vikings are going to be able to move the ball pretty well. They were a very impressive offense last year, brought in Jordan Addison this year. I think they're going to move the ball well. So I think Tampa Bay is going to have to try to put up points. And so for only 55.5 yards, I'm willing to take the over with Godwin.
Lock it in.
Oh,
okay.
Chris Godwin, 55.5 receiving yards. Higher for week 1. Byron Murphy Jr., Caleb Evans, Andrew Booth Jr., Najee Thompson, Tay Gowan, and Mekhi Blackman. Those are the Minnesota Vikings cornerbacks.
Yes.
So in the slot, I think Chris Godwin could have himself a day against this Viking secondary. I 100% agree. Higher than 55.5, I think is a great start to this build. Ty, I'll kick it over to you. Your favorite projection on Underdog Fantasy for week 1 that you want to contribute to this play?
Jahmyr Gibbs higher than 30.5 receiving yards. And here's the thing. I am getting Jalen Waddle player prop vibes with Jahmyr Gibbs this year, where it seemed like almost every single week, Jalen Waddle's line was almost like 20 yards too low, and it was an automatic over every single time. I get that with Gibbs this year. And I think for now, it's going to stay in this 30 to 40 range just because it's a running back, and you never really know what running back receiving numbers will look like on a week-to-week basis. But Jahmyr Gibbs, like I was saying when I was discussing the Lions against the Chiefs as my best running back matchup, they're gonna use Gibbs. Okay. And you also look at it from this perspective. Gibbs's total yards line is 74.5, rushing and receiving combined. And his rushing yard line is 39.5. So there's got to be an over there somewhere if he wants to get the combined over. Again, and 3.5 receptions, I feel like that's an over too. I don't know. I just think all these lines in Gibbs are just a little low, and I am very, very confident and comfortable with this one this week.
We love him.
We do love Jahmyr Gibbs over 30.5 receiving yards. Lock it in. Higher. Thank you. Higher. It's higher. You're right. It's different on Underdog. We don't talk overs, unders. We talk.
We're adjusting.
We're adjusting. Forgive us, Underdog. Cameron, I'm with you. I feel disgusting. I feel absolutely. My inside feels like this.
All over it today.
I feel my insides feel like this making this pick, but I saw the projection. Travis Etienne higher than 58.5 rushing yards against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, we brought this up earlier on the episode. The Jaguars could just come out and just stomp the Colts. Okay. They could just come out, get up 31-3, and next thing you know, Travis Etienne is running the ball nonstop. Now, the Colts don't have the worst offensive line or defensive line in the world, excuse me. Like, you got DeForest Buckner in there, Grover Stewart, his ability against the run, not bad. It's definitely above average, that is for sure. But their problem is that they don't really defend well on the edges, right? You get Kwity Paye, who's a rookie last year, like, he still really has to make an impression on the edge. Samson Ebukam, I don't even know if I pronounced that name right.
Samson Ebukam.
Yeah. You got excited about that.
Well, it's
why'd you get excited about that?
Because he's always been stuck in this Niners rotation, and he's been very, very good. And I was low key hoping that the Vikings would sign him, but they didn't. And so now he's in Indy, and I hope he thrives. Sorry, that's just.
Why are you saying that when I'm picking Travis Etienne over?
We're just going to run the other way.
Because,
Lucas.
no, because
the other way.
Because here's the thing: he's a pass rusher. He's not a run stopper.
Fair, that's fair. So look, if Travis Etienne runs on the edges, I'm on board. Okay, I'm on board. You look at when he was the full-time starter last year. 8 in 8 of 13 games. Etienne went over 58.5. Went higher than 58.5. I'm doing higher. Went higher than 58.5 rushing yards. And in one of those games, week 12 was, hey, he only got 2 rushes for 3 yards and got injured. Okay, so really let's make it 8 of 12. Mm-hmm. Let's make it 8 of 12. And I love that line and that projection for ETN this week, 58.5. I'm going to go ahead and lock that in for the higher. So you go to recap. Chris Godwin, higher than 55.5 receiving yards. Travis Etienne, higher than 58.5 rushing yards. And Jahmyr Gibbs, higher than 30.5 receiving yards. So now if you've been paying attention, I told you earlier this episode that we're actually going to make a play that could 10 times your entry. And you notice at the beginning of the segment, I said 3 picks will only 6 times your entry. Now, the catch is Underdog is running a special right now on Patrick Mahomes' total yards for week 1. His projection is set at only half a total yard. That is about as close of a lock as you can get. That is a free win that they are giving out to all of their customers this week. So if you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use the promo code fellas. You're going to get that. You're going to get that bonus projection for Patrick Mahomes. They're even going to double your first deposit up to $100 for you. And you know what? If your league is ballsy, and they draft 2 hours before the draft, we'll send you our draft guide for free. We'll send you our draft guide for free. But the most important thing there is that you will get that instant match on your first deposit up to $100. Again, use the promo code fellas. Take advantage of that Mahomes free space like we are, and we are going to turn that play into 10 times of our entry this week. We'll come back each and every week. We'll reflect on the previous weeks, and we'll go ahead and create a new pick and slip for the next week. Fellas, anything that I missed?
No, you did amazing. No slip-ups.
0, none. I don't even. What are mess ups? We don't mess up on this.
We rarely get a wrath, Lucas, so we got to take advantage when we can.
little did you all know, I actually just wire transfer them a little cut of my paycheck this next month, so they wouldn't make fun for me at the end of the episode for it. No, it has been a long day. It's 8:20 p.m. We're ready to wrap this episode up. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Hey, if you're looking for week 1 rankings, if you're like, wow, these guys talk a lot of show, but they don't have any content to show for it. Not only do we obviously drop 2 videos a day during the NFL season, but we have rankings each and every single week. So if you want to see our week 1 rankings, head down to our chalkboard in the link in our description. It will be in our weekly rankings channel there. It's all in a nicely laid out PDF for you. You can go ahead and view that in our chalkboard. Again, follow us on the socials, FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, Camlaw, FFF for Cameron, Tyler_Plath for Tyler. We will be back with more content. We'll be doing some takeaways in a short for week 1. We'll go ahead and we'll have a live start sit Sunday morning on both TikTok and YouTube. If you want to tune in, my goodness, I'm getting tired. I need to quit talking soon. If you want to tune in, get all of your start sit questions answered by Cameron or Tyler. They will be handling all of those. And then we'll be back on the podcast next week to recap week 1 of NFL action with our top 10 takeaways. All right, I think I got everything now. Thanks again for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are so grateful for all your support. And we will see you all soon. We'll see you all next time. Deuces.
Deuces.